They told you not to ask about her past, that it makes you insecure, that real men don't care. But that's the biggest setup men fall for, because her past doesn't vanish. It haunts her present, and eventually it haunts you. Every man she's been with becomes a silent benchmark you'll be compared to. Every scar she's carried becomes your daily battle. And if you ignore it, you risk more than heartbreak. You risk your finances, your confidence, even your mission as a man. I'm going to break down why her past will always shape your future, and the 3 rules you must live by to keep control. Since we were young, we've been fed the same sweet story, that a woman's past doesn't matter. Teachers told us, influencers repeated it, dating coaches packaged it as wisdom. They all said the same thing, only focus on who she is today. And for years, men swallowed that message because it was comforting. It allowed us to believe in fresh starts, in clean slates, in the fantasy that history leaves no mark. But here's the problem. That story is not truth. It's a tranquilizer. It numbs you just long enough to walk blindfolded into the slaughterhouse of modern relationships. Because a woman's past doesn't disappear when she meets you. It doesn't vanish because she claims to have changed. Her history doesn't fade into the background like an old photograph. It follows her into every interaction, every argument, every silent moment between you. Think about it. Every decision she made before you, every fling, every heartbreak, every reckless night has rewired her psychology. Her expectations of men weren't born in a vacuum. They were carved from the men who came before you. And pretending her past is irrelevant is like pretending scars don't ache when the weather changes. They do. Society tells men not to judge. They say it's insecurity. They shame you for even asking questions. But the irony is brutal. By silencing men, society isn't protecting women. It's disarming men. It leaves you defenseless, stripped of the right to evaluate who and what you're actually dealing with. The reality is this: her past and her present are one. The patterns she lived yesterday are the patterns she brings into today. And if you ignore that connection, you're not noble, you're vulnerable. Because history has a way of repeating itself, and in relationships, repetition is rarely in your favor. Biology never lies. You can debate opinions, you can challenge cultural norms, but you can't rewrite the chemistry of the human brain. Of course, human bonding is complex and shaped by more than just chemicals, but biology still leaves a footprint we can't ignore. Pair bonding, the ability to truly attach to one person, isn't a romantic fantasy. It's a biological mechanism. And like any mechanism, it wears down with overuse. Here's how it works. When a woman connects with a man in intimacy, her brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It's the same chemical that bonds a mother to her newborn. Oxytocin builds attachment, trust, loyalty. But just like tape, that bond doesn't stick with the same strength forever. The first time, the glue is strong. Pull it apart and stick it again, the hold weakens. Do it a dozen times, the tape barely clings at all. Now add dopamine into the picture. Dopamine is the thrill chemical, the rush of novelty. Every new partner floods her brain with a high. But dopamine works like a drug. The more it's chased, the higher the baseline. That means stability feels flat, security feels dull, and only chaos or mystery feels alive. It's why a man who offers peace often gets labeled boring, while the man who brings uncertainty feels irresistible. Think of a copier. The first print is crisp, sharp, full of detail. By the 50th, the image is blurred. By the 200th, you can barely recognize the original. That's what happens when the brain bonds and detaches, over and over again. The system dulls, the signal weakens, and eventually the ability to deeply connect, to see one man as irreplaceable, fades into static. This isn't moral judgment, it's physiology. Every connection leaves a mark. Every detachment takes a toll, and pretending that the past doesn't matter means pretending that biology itself doesn't matter, but biology always wins. Scars don't fade just because a new relationship begins. Trauma doesn't reset, it compounds. Yes, healing is possible, but unless it happens, old wounds don't vanish. They resurface. Each betrayal, each disappointment, each chaotic breakup stacks on top of the last like layers of debt. And when the bill comes due, it's not the man who caused the wounds who pays. It's you. This is where projection enters the picture. A woman who's been cheated on brings suspicion into her next relationship. Suddenly, your late-night text is an interrogation. A woman who once dated a controlling man may look at your confidence and see dominance. A woman who was used for intimacy may interpret your desire as selfishness. You didn't write those chapters, but you're punished as if you did. And then there are the ghosts. Invisible, but always present. Every man she cried over, every man she compared herself to, every man she wished would stay. They don't leave when you arrive. They linger in the shadows of your relationship, stepping into arguments, whispering into silences, haunting the bond you thought was just between two people. You can't compete with them because they're not flesh and blood. They're memories, and memories don't die. What men don't realize is that you don't just date her. You date her history. You inherit every scar she's collected, every paranoia she's absorbed, every craving for chaos that once kept her hooked. It's like moving into a house where every wall still echoes with the arguments of past tenants. You can paint it, you can furnish it, but the echoes remain. The hard truth is this: unless those wounds are truly healed, they don't vanish, they resurface. And when they do, they won't ask if you're ready to carry them. They'll simply land on your shoulders. Every man she's been with leaves more than a memory. He leaves a measuring stick. Whether she admits it or not, every future partner is quietly compared against the men who came before. One made her laugh harder. One gave her more intensity in bed. Another had sharper ambition. Someone else carried the edge of danger. Piece by piece, they become her silent yardsticks. This is the comparison trap. You walk into her life believing you're starting fresh. In reality, you're stepping into an invisible tournament you never agreed to enter. Every word you say, every move you make, every moment of intimacy, it all gets weighed against ghosts. And the cruel part? You never know the rules, but you always feel the sting. It might be subtle. A sigh when she calls you safe. A passing remark about an ex's drive. A sudden withdrawal when she remembers a wilder chapter of her past. She may never say the words out loud, but her behavior reveals the truth. You're not being judged in isolation. You're being judged against a highlight reel of every man before you. And that's a game no one wins. Because you're not competing with flesh and blood. You're competing with memory. Memory is flawless. It only recalls the thrill, the chase, the high. It forgets the arguments, the boredom, the betrayal. You, on the other hand, are real. You come with flaws, with human limits, with the ordinary reality of stability. And when reality collides with nostalgia, nostalgia often wins. This is why so many men feel like they're losing ground without knowing why. They're not failing. They're simply fighting an opponent they can't touch, can't see, and can never defeat. When men ignore the past, they don't just risk heartbreak, they risk devastation on every level. Look at the numbers. In the West, nearly 70% of divorces are initiated by women. And yes, context matters. Studies suggest women are often quicker to act when they believe the relationship is broken, while many men stay longer in marriages they find unsatisfying, whether from fear of financial loss, concern for children, or simply tolerating the status quo. But regardless of the reason, the impact is the same. When she walks away, the law doesn't just divide the relationship, it divides your life. Financially, the costs can be crushing. Decades of work can be sliced into payments and percentages: alimony, child support, legal fees, the slow bleed of time spent in hearings and negotiations. Opportunity cost piles on top. Energy you could have invested in your health, your business, your craft gets redirected into managing fallout. The system isn't interested in your romantic ideals, it's designed to apportion obligations. If you chose blindly, you often pay dearly. But money is only part of the bill. The psychological toll is heavier. In unstable dynamics, men are routinely cast as therapist, emotional crutch, or the convenient outlet for accumulated frustration. You start walking on eggshells, translating every mood, absorbing projections from wounds you didn't cause. At first, you call it empathy. Over time, it becomes exhaustion. Suspicion becomes routine. Intimacy turns into a test. Your steadiness is recast as boring. Your desire as selfish. Your boundaries as control. Confidence leaks out in small, daily losses until you barely recognize yourself. Then comes the most dangerous cost: mission drift. A man's purpose is the anchor that keeps everything else in order. When you're pulled into constant conflict, you stop building and start firefighting. You explain. You defend. You appease. Your calendar fills with emotional logistics instead of strategic moves. Momentum dies quietly. Missed workouts, deferred projects, diluted focus. And with it, the identity that made you valuable in the first place erodes. This isn't a moral indictment of women. It's a risk assessment for men. Unresolved patterns, hers or yours, compound interest. If you ignore signals because they're inconvenient, you trade your future for a fantasy. Relationships should multiply your strength. If they consistently subtract from your finances, your sanity, and your direction, the math is telling you the truth, long before the judge ever does. If the risks are this obvious, why do men still fall for it? Why do smart, successful, capable men ignore the signs and walk straight into disaster? The answer comes down to three forces that control more men than they realize: hope, guilt, and shame. Hope is the oldest trap. Men are builders by nature. We see potential, and we believe we can shape it. A man looks at a woman with a chaotic past and thinks, "She's never had a man like me. With me, it will be different." He convinces himself he'll be the reset button, the exception to her history. Hope blinds him, and in that blindness, he walks into patterns carved long before he arrived. Then comes guilt. Society drills it into men from every direction. Real men don't care about a woman's past. If you bring it up, you're insecure. If you set standards, you're controlling. And because most men are raised to avoid conflict, to prove they're good guys, they swallow the guilt and silence their instincts. Finally, shame. This is the killer. If you walk away from a woman with too much baggage, you're labeled judgmental. If you demand higher standards, you're called toxic. If you want stability, you're branded outdated. And so men cave. They silence themselves. They accept less than they deserve because the alternative is to be shamed in public or in private. This is how strong men end up in weak positions. Not because they lack courage, but because hope, guilt, and shame are powerful leashes. They keep men compliant, quiet, and blind. And the longer those leashes stay on, the easier it is to march straight into ruin. Every man thinks he'll be the exception. It's the fantasy that keeps so many walking straight into heartbreak. "She's never had a man like me," he tells himself. "She was reckless before, but with me, she'll finally settle down." It's comforting. It strokes the ego. It whispers that love is powerful enough to erase history. But fantasy is not fact. Patterns don't vanish because you showed up. They're etched into psychology like grooves in stone. A woman who spent years chasing chaos doesn't suddenly crave stability because you walked into her life. A woman who built her 20s on fleeting highs won't magically find consistency thrilling. And a woman who's broken bonds over and over doesn't suddenly rewrite her story when you enter the chapter. What men fail to see is that love doesn't erase patterns, it activates them. You don't get a clean slate, you inherit everything she's trained herself to expect. If she's conditioned to equate excitement with drama, your peace will feel boring. If her attachment system has worn thin, your loyalty won't glue her in place. Believing you're the exception is like building a castle on sinking sand. No matter how strong the walls, no matter how beautiful the design, the foundation collapses beneath you. And when it does, all that's left is rubble. And a man wondering how he didn't see it coming. The truth is simple. You're not rewriting her script. You're stepping into it. And unless that script has truly changed, you're just another character in the same story, destined for the same ending. Patterns don't lie. They don't bend to romance. They don't change because you want them to, and they don't vanish just because you hope hard enough. A person's past behavior is the single most reliable preview of their future. And ignoring that truth is the costliest mistake a man can make. Think about it. If she's walked away from men before, why assume she won't walk away again? If she's built her relationships on chaos, why expect her to suddenly thrive in calm? If she's trained her brain to crave novelty, why believe you'll be the man who makes stability irresistible? Hope doesn't rewrite wiring. Effort doesn't reset biology. Patterns persist. This isn't about morality. It's not about calling her good or bad. It's about probability. And probability doesn't care about your feelings. The math is brutal. The more partners she's had, the harder it is for her to attach. The more trauma she's collected, the more it bleeds into the present. The more instability she's lived, the more it feels normal, and your stability feels foreign. Men love to believe they're different, that their love will tip the scales. But psychology isn't sentimental. It runs on repetition. Just as debt accumulates interest, unresolved baggage accumulates weight. And eventually, that weight crushes the relationship, no matter how strong you think you are. So when you see patterns, don't ignore them. Don't excuse them. Don't let society shame you into blindness, because blindness isn't noble, it's suicidal. Her past isn't a closed chapter. It's a script she's rehearsed for years. And unless she's truly rewritten it, you're not starting a new story. You're signing up for a repeat performance. So what do you do? If her past is real, if the risks are undeniable, if the ghosts and the baggage always follow, how does a man protect his future? The answer isn't to hate women or to give up on relationships altogether. The answer is to live with strategy. And that begins with 3 principles. First, choose wisely. Stop letting society guilt you into lowering your standards. You are not insecure for wanting loyalty. You are not controlling for demanding stability. You are not toxic for protecting your legacy. The men who end up destroyed aren't always weak. They're often careless in choosing. They ignore red flags. They dismiss patterns. They tell themselves they'll be the exception. Wisdom isn't in denying reality. Wisdom is in seeing clearly, setting boundaries, and walking away when the signs are there. Second, build your mission. A man without a mission is a man easily trapped. When you live with purpose, when you're building your body, your mind, your wealth, your legacy, you stop competing for approval. You stop chasing women who lost their own direction. Instead, you attract respect. Mission protects you because it reminds you who you are and where you're going. And no relationship is worth abandoning the path you were born to walk. Third, refuse to carry baggage that isn't yours. You are not her savior. You didn't cause her scars, and you won't be the one to heal them. Trying to fix what you didn't break will drain you, hollow you, and leave you weaker than when you started. Your role is not to be her therapist, her punching bag, or her emotional life raft. Your role is to lead, to build, to protect. And sometimes the strongest move a man can make is to walk away before the damage becomes permanent. These three principles aren't just rules for dating. They're survival codes. Because in a world that lies to you, that shames you for seeing patterns, that tells you to close your eyes and hope for the best, choosing truth is rebellion. And rebellion is the only way to reclaim control. Her past isn't gone. It isn't erased. It isn't irrelevant. It's alive in her psychology, her biology, and her behavior. And if you ignore it, it will live in your future too. That's the hard truth most men don't want to face, but the cost of denial is brutal. Because the moment you turn a blind eye, you sign up for the same ghosts, the same cycles, the same destruction that broke the men before you. Look around. The evidence is everywhere. Men with money, power, influence, undone in courtrooms, drained in therapy, stripped of their confidence. They didn't fail because they were weak. They failed because they were blind. They believed the lie that her past didn't matter, and they paid for it with everything that did matter. Their finances, their mental health, their mission. But you don't have to repeat their mistakes. You've seen the patterns. You've heard the evidence. You know the truth. Now the choice is yours. Will you step into relationships with your eyes open? Or will you swallow society's lie and gamble your future on denial? Wisdom is not bitterness. Survival is not hate. Clarity is not insecurity. These are the weapons men must use if they want to reclaim control. When you recognize patterns, when you choose wisely, when you refuse to carry baggage that isn't yours, you stop bleeding for ghosts. You stop investing in illusions. You stop letting her history write your destiny. This is the rebellion. In a world that tells men to stay quiet, choosing truth is an act of defiance. So if this message struck something deep, don't keep it to yourself. Hit like. Share it with a brother who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with your thoughts. And subscribe, because this isn't just a channel, it's a movement. A movement of men who refuse to be lied to, who refuse to play blind, and who refuse to let their future be destroyed by someone else's past. Stay sharp, stay awake, and never forget, your future is only safe when you protect it.